Welcome to the Happiness Matters podcast, where we'll explore happiness at work and show you how to coach yourself to be happier there and more successful too, no matter what.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia Seal and I'm your coach in this Happiness Matters coaching journey. Thank you for joining me again in this final coaching episode of this mini coaching journey we've been on since episode 1.17, coaching our negative emotions and learning how to feel better. If you've just joined us, don't worry. There's plenty in today's episode to help you, and you can always go back and listen later. This mini negative emotions coaching journey ended up a bit longer than I'd originally planned. In the midst of looking at our unhappiness, it was Fun at Work Day, it was Christmas Day, and New Year. Then I also split the recent topic of toxic emotions and what to do about them into two parts. And then finally, last week was our Q&A session, where we looked more into power and when to intervene in unhealthy conflict as a manager. Just to say again, my suggestion of cleaning up the inside of your brain applies to any intervention, at home as well as at work. You need to come from a neutral place. If you can't do it, then your next best step is to start using the toxin antidotes as best you can. Now, if these sessions on toxicity in your relationships felt too intense, maybe for some of you even dangerous territory, and perhaps even the last 16 episodes on exploring and feeling our negative emotions on purpose felt just too strange, stay with me. We're heading into very different territory next week. Today we'll follow on from last week's discussion on how and when to intervene in others' unhealthy conflict and what's at stake when asking someone to change their behavior. But we'll look at change in ourselves instead, how we resist change constantly and why change is hard. But we'll also look at why we're actually good at change and how to harness this skill for our happiness. As a reminder, you can download an overview of where we are right now in our coaching to help you navigate it. And while you're there, please also download all the free tools I've created for you. And you'll find this on our website, Happiness-Matters.coach. So let's consider change and the discomfort of change. This is a very loaded word, isn't it? Change. I think I can safely say that today the predominant thinking about change is that it's hard and it's difficult. So much so that we have a whole discipline called change management. As you know, I've been an employee engagement consultant for years, and it's really about understanding change, organizational change, and people change. And what we do is that we try to manage the process of change, taking organizations and people through a formal process of change, through denial, through pity city, the valley of despair, the circle of chaos, and the climb to productivity. Change is a huge topic, and we'll certainly come back to it later in the podcast. But for today, I want to look at why change is hard and why it isn't, and why this is useful to us in coaching ourselves through our negative emotions towards our happy and successful no matter what. Firstly, let's look at this belief system that we seem to be operating on. Change is hard. You might know the English saying from the 1700s, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It seems true, doesn't it? Just look at how curious children are, or puppies for that matter, and how they want to explore and get their fingers into everything. And then look at the rest of us who are creating routines and structures to meet the demands of the world and supposedly getting less curious, less spontaneous, and less open to newness, like tired old dogs. And look at us when it comes to goals and New Year's resolutions. How many of you have a 2020 New Year's resolution that's still alive and kicking? We usually have fantastic plans on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of January, and sometimes on about the 28th of January. Goals to break a bad habit, like lose weight, eat better, learn a language, read more. And how have you progressed? Slowly or not at all? And most of us have probably forgotten them already. Now, this belief or way of thinking about age and our ability to change has been around for years. We believed it, and so did most neuroscientists. Our brain structure and function are fixed through adulthood. There were some outliers, even as far back as Malakan in the 1790s, William James in the 1890s, and Marion Diamond in the 1960s. But it was only more recently, with insights gained from studying brain damage, phantom limbs, chronic pain, and how meditation changes the brain, that neuroscientists concluded that the brain had to be plastic. It was only in 2016 that pioneer neuroscientist Michael Merzenich was recognized for his work, receiving the Kavli Prize in Neuroscience for the discovery of mechanisms that allow experience and neural activity to remodel brain function. Nowadays, you'll see any amount of brain training exercise on the internet based on our current understanding of how neuronal circuits in the brain can be wired in response to training and injury. And by the way, neurogenesis, the birth of brain cells, continues well into our old age too. So that's good news for all of us over 50. So yes, our brains are plastic and are able to change in ways that neuroscientists are still discovering. So you can teach an old dog new tricks. Now, if this is true and we have plastic brains, then why do we still find change so hard? The very minute we embark on a journey of change, it just seems to get hard, doesn't it? There's excitement at the beginning, and that very soon wears thin. Just think of those New Year's resolutions. And so instead of excitement, we're feeling some kind of discomfort. It's no longer fun and exciting, and so we stop doing it. It's like Billy Ocean's 1988 song, When the Going Gets Tough. Except the tough don't get going. Instead, we throw in the towel, we break our diet, let our gym membership expire, and slide back into our old habits until next year comes round. So what is really going on? What's actually happening to our brain in change? And just to remind you, I am not a neuroscientist, so this is a very basic understanding. Let's go back to our earlier primal brain discussions. Our primitive brain is focused only on our safety and survival, our comfort and our hedonistic pleasure, and it really likes sameness. Anything that is perceived as a threat to this, anything potentially fearful, even rejection or failure, anything new that comes in and rocks the boat of safety and challenges our comfort zone, our immediate reaction is to resist and push the change away. Our inbuilt survival system kicks in to resist the change. So with an unmanaged brain, when our primal reactive brain is in charge, this is our default reaction to anything that comes up in our lives. So you've got resistance to anything uncomfortable, and then you've got the discomfort of change. So yes, change is hard because our primal brains are resisting it every step of the way. And it's very hard for us to overcome the primal brain, to choose to respond instead of react by using our prefrontal cortex, because it's our lightning-fast survival machine at work. Its reactions are automatic, very fast, and very efficient. But change is hard for another reason too. Our reactions are habits, or our habitual patterns, are made up of these three components, the ones I've spoken about previously: think, feel, act. And these three components make up everything that we are and do in the world. We think, we feel, and we act. So every combination of think, feel, act is a neurological pattern wired into our brains. In change, we're wanting to swap from one think, feel, act pattern to another think, feel, act pattern. And we want to do it overnight, don't we? But these patterns are deeply integrated at every level of your life. Your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, your physical sensations, your actions and inactions in the world. All these components in the pattern need to change. And very often we give up before we've done the whole transition. We try to change one or two components, but forget the whole picture and what else must be done. Typically, we change our actions without the thoughts and the feelings, or we might practice positive affirmations, but don't do anything. We practice tapping into feelings, but we don't examine our thoughts. So, of course, the change doesn't stick. It cannot stick. Because our primal brain, our primitive brain, is trying to take us back to the well-worn path of our old TFA pattern. By only attempting change on one level of one component, it really just ignites our brains with fear. And change doesn't last. The brain will do everything it can to go back to its comfortable status quo. And if I can touch on menopause and midlife again here, this is the biggest phase of change that a woman goes through. Yes, our body is going through profound changes the way it does in puberty, but we are no longer children. We are independent individuals out in the world with multiple responsibilities, ongoing stresses. We're making contributions and having a direct impact on others around us every day. So the menopause transition is the most incredible opportunity to use as a metamorphosis experience for yourself. Our very being, our very wiring is supporting us to do this. Biochemical and physical changes, big life events like death, divorce, retirement, and our emotional experiences over this period are actually setting us up for change to be easier than ever. The midlife transition is your best opening for this work that you've ever had in your life. Now, coaching is actually all about change. You might even want to think of your coach as your personal change manager consultant. You're here to coach because you want something to change. It's all about being at point A where you are now and not being satisfied, being out of alignment with where you believe you should be, and it's about your desire to be at point B, your vision of the future and where you want to be. And so coaching is all about going from point A to point B. And if we go way back to episode 1.5, What's Stopping Your Happiness and Success, I introduced you to the idea of the coaching journey as having to cross the ancient Greeks' river of misery with Charon as your river guide. Coaching is about this river crossing, this metamorphosis, this transition, this change. Coaching works with the discomfort of change, with your unmanaged primal brain and your prefrontal cortex thinking brain. And coaching is all about the systematic changing from an old think, feel, act pattern to a new think, feel, act pattern, focusing on every level of your life, your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions and feelings, your physical somatic sensations, your actions and inactions in the world, and the results of your behaviors. Interestingly, there's always relief from your unhappiness and stuckness when you start working with a coach. And it's partly that excitement of new possibilities and a future free of your problem. It's partly the relief of having a guide who can see the big picture. And it's partly how the trust relationship with your coach shifts your panicking brain into safety, where your innate curiosity, innovation, and ability to embrace change can kick in. So coaching guides you through the change process. But great coaching will do much more than that. It will actually put more wood on the fire of your discomfort. So yes, it will calm your brain down and then work with you and your relationship to discomfort so that you can learn to embrace change in a whole new way. That's what can be transformational about coaching. You'll learn to overcome that reaction of your primal brain to doing new things and avoiding anything unpleasant. You'll learn to embrace discomfort. You'll learn how to walk through the fire and choose your next level evolution because you want to. Because the discomfort is fun. That's a big ask of a coach. This adding wood to the fire is a Tibetan expression for deliberately increasing the challenges of maintaining a steady mind. As my teacher Yongey Mingye Rinpoche explains in his book, In Love with the World, generally, people go through life taking note of those experiences that recurrently inflame our anger or anxiety or fear. And then we try and avoid them, telling ourselves things like, I can't watch scary movies, I can't be in big crowds, I have a terrible fear of heights. But the causes that provoke these responses do not go away, and when we find ourselves in these situations, our reactions can overwhelm us. Using our inner resources to work with these issues is our only true protection. Adding wood to the fire deliberately brings difficult situations to the forefront so that we can work with them directly. We take the very behaviors or circumstances that we think of as problems and turn them into allies. When we add wood to the fire, instead of trying to smother the flames of our fears, we add more fuel, and in the process gain confidence in our capacity to work with whatever settings we find ourselves in. We no longer avoid situations that have disturbed us in the past, or that evoke destructive patterns or emotional outbursts. We begin to rely on another aspect of mind that exists beneath our reactivity. I laugh so much at this phrase, especially nowadays, with the actual reality of menopausal hot flashes. It's as if the wisdom of menopause is fighting for our attention by adding wood to the fire. Coaching adds wood to the fire and strengthens your ability to turn towards your discomfort and your negative emotions, transforming your unhappiness into the currency of your dreams. Discomfort and negative emotions become the key to your change, to your unhappiness. As my own coach, Brooke Castillo, loves to say, discomfort is the currency of your dreams. And I introduced this idea back in episode 125, Your Next Step Evolution, on using our negative emotions to evolve ourselves to the next level. You might want to go back and listen. So this mini coaching journey on your negative emotions is all about getting used to feeling uncomfortable. It's the beginning of how you can get good at discomfort, how you might actually look for it and put wood on the fire of your negative emotions and the discomfort that are such an inevitable part of growth, to find what's on the other side of it, which is your life, happy and successful no matter what. One of the first things that coaches do is look at where you've been using your so-called missing skills somewhere else in your life already, and then get you to practice it in the new area, the area where you're stuck. So let's do the same with change by considering how good we are at change already. I know, sounds crazy after everything that we've been talking about, how change is so hard. Yet useful if discomfort and negative emotions hold the key to our happiness. Change is always happening, and everything is always changing all the time. Think about it. Night changes into day, and day changes into night. The weather changes through the year. And if you live in Cape Town, it's changing from 1 minute to the next. Our dogs change from loving cuddlebugs to obsessed guinea fowl hunters in seconds, and the coffee machine at work breaks and is replaced with a different one. People around us are changing all the time. Our children change and grow up. We were students, and then we get married. Our friends move away. Politicians come and go. Thank goodness for that. We are changing all the time too. Our bodies get fit or fat. We get older and more wrinkled. We learn things. We get tired and then refreshed. We hear something on this podcast and we're different in the next moment. We're always moving forward, and we are constantly embracing change every day. But we don't see that in so many instances, we are good at change already. So often, we're accepting of change. We're already embracing the change inherent in life. And in these simple examples, you might be able to see how we resist change too, how our primal brain's desire for the status quo kicks in automatically. We complain about the weather and wish it was different. We boycott the new coffee machine and go to the shop downstairs instead. We bemoan our wrinkles and use any amount of magical creams. Buddhist philosophy looks deeply into our tendency to resist change rather than getting good at it and embracing it. And Buddha's observations on human life start with the very idea of us resisting change, with his 4 noble truths. These are basic truths about our human life, 4 facts of reality. If we resist these truths, if we resist reality, it leads to our unhappiness. Accepting these truths, accepting reality, leads to our happiness. Happiness and unhappiness is as simple as that. And the first of these is the truth of suffering. Now, suffering is a strong word for most of us. It brings to mind intense physical and emotional pain and trauma. But in this case, it also means the suffering we create for ourselves, emotional suffering. And we create suffering for ourselves when we resist reality, when we want things to be different, when we resist change, when we resist the reality that everything changes all the time, when we resist the impermanence of everything, when we make change hard. Now, one of the best ways I've come across to understand why discomfort is so normal and yet so resistible, and then how to work with the suffering, is to use the work done in organizational and relationship systems coaching. Orsk calls this edge work. In my work in employee engagement and as a team coach, I found this edge work very useful to help people step into change as part of a change management process. And I thought I'd touch on it today for you to use in your own self-coaching. The edge is the dividing line between where we are now and where we are going next, between the status quo now and the change. Or another way of looking at it, between the known and the unknown. So the edge is the horizon of change that we can't see over. So no wonder it's terrifying. And as you can see from my earlier examples, edges are part of the process of life. So any time we try something new, a new environment, a new idea, a new thought, a new behavior, a new expectation of ourselves, we are stepping over and crossing the edge of what we know. And what Orsk coaches do is coach you over the edge. We look for signals to unfold that will show us both your edge, and then we partner with you in actually crossing the edge, using things like progressive crossing, visiting, and zigzagging. And no, we don't just put our hands on your back and shove you over the edge. What's useful to you here in your self-coaching is to think about your negative emotions, your unhappiness, and your discomfort as your indication that you have an edge to cross. These are your signals that change is waiting for you. When you're feeling the discomfort of negative emotions, that's your guide, your sign that there's an edge for you to cross. It might be looming somewhere in the future, it might be today, but change is there. And the best response to all the negative emotions, all the discomfort of this anticipated change, is to walk towards it, to make the choice to evolve. And what this looks like for you in your happiness coaching journey are tiny steps of crossing over at any level of your think, feel, act pattern. A thought to practice thinking, a feeling to call up on demand, an action you can take, or something you can stop doing. A very simple example might help you now. So here's something that I do myself that involves negative emotions, discomfort, change, and edge work, but it's very simple. Firstly, I create my week's plan on a Monday and schedule it on my calendar. And then every morning I start out by looking at what I have on my schedule to do for the day. I scan the day and I notice where there's a little sense of dread or of not wanting to do something, resistance. So on purpose, I look for what's feeling edgy. Something that I don't feel like doing right now and would far rather go for coffee with my friend Tracy down the road. So I'm looking for the urge to procrastinate. This is the edge work. And I know that this is where I need to coach myself and start managing my brain on purpose. So in my self-coaching, I start with the feeling of resistance and the urge to procrastinate a specific task. And I go from there, looking at all the components of the think, feel, act pattern that are creating this feeling of resistance, coaching myself at every level, each component. So my default think, feel, act pattern when it comes to sticking to my calendar plan is the thought, I don't feel like doing this right now. The feeling I get from that thought is resistant. And the action is I don't do it. I go for coffee, I rejig my calendar. And then, if self-recrimination jumps in on top of this, I might just give up on the day completely and buffer those horrid feelings away by binge watching The Big Bang Theory on Netflix instead. I know myself pretty well when it comes to not sticking to my calendar plan, so this doesn't happen very often anymore. But every day I'm still doing the edge work, looking for the discomfort that my primal brain wants to avoid, resisting the call that requires me to change a little and grow a little. It's a miraculous process using our understanding of change, acceptance of discomfort, and the inevitability of edge work. It is the process of creating our happiness, actually. Now, if you're not sure where to start with your self-coaching, or the problem you're dealing with feels too big to tackle on your own, and you want your own change management consultant, personal coach, you can book a session with me directly from our website, Happiness-Matters.coach. Here you have a few options. Every Wednesday, you can book a once-off session to coach on anything that's getting in the way of your happiness and success. And these sessions are especially for you, my podcast listeners, to help you take your self-coaching to the next level. Or you can book a free 20-minute consult session where we talk about coaching together for longer, either in my 8-week Fast Results coaching program or in a 3 to 6 month midlife transition conversation. On the website, click on the yellow button Coach with Julia and go straight through to my booking calendar. Okay then, the very last part of today's session is to look back at the entire negative emotions mini coaching journey to see how it all fits together in Series 1 and in your self-coaching practice. Over the last 16 episodes, which is about the last 4 months, we have been focused primarily on what to do about our negative emotions, our unhappiness. We deepened our knowledge about the happiness wisdom concepts and learnt about some new ones like emotional lion-heartedness, anti-fragility, next level evolution, emotional repertoire, inner power, afflictive emotions, and comfort at the edge. So what you'll have at this point in your self-coaching is, yes, some new concepts to think about and experiment with. But I also showed you a way to process your negative emotions, to feel them all the way through, to feel them better. And by giving you a secret to emotional health, we've now opened the door to work with your negative emotions at a transformative level. How to process them, how to discover what's actually driving them, and how to use them for your benefit. And this is one of the fundamental principles of Happiness Matters, to learn how to feel better on purpose and intentionally, so we're never overriding our negative emotions with false positivity and fake happiness. Instead, we're embracing our negative emotions, using them to turn around our happiness and even fuel our next level evolution and contribution to the world. So by now, 16 episodes later, you'll understand your unhappiness so much better. Remember way back on International Workers' Day, the 1st of May 2019, we launched Series 1, the coaching process of defining, assessing, and visioning your happiness. The intention of Series 1 is to get closer to the core of what's driving your unhappiness and to map out our journey ahead to happiness. It's where we dig deeper into what we mean when we say happy and successful no matter what. And it's where we thoroughly define the issue you're grappling with, what's the problem, where you're feeling stuck in your life, including all the traps, blocks, and obstacles standing between where you are now, point A, and where you want to be, point B. And this mini coaching journey of learning how to coach your negative emotions gives you the opportunity to be much clearer, much more focused on the nature of your obstacles, your happiness traps. So much so that this exploration has maybe even changed what you thought your happiness coaching journey was all about. It might even have changed your point B, your future vision, and your definition of whole being happiness, what your happy and successful no matter what looks like. So yes, this is the end of the negative emotions mini coaching journey within Series 1, as promised, signed and delivered. If you've got questions, please submit them to Ask Julia on the website, as I do Q&A sessions regularly on the podcast, and I'd love to hear from you and how this material is helping you. And to end off, I'm going to remind us of the quote that started this journey by British historian Richard Scotch. Unhappy is the story of happiness. Everyone's journey to happiness begins from the same place. Unhappiness. I've loved this since I first heard it. Unhappy is the story of happiness. Next week, still in Series 1, Defining, Assessing and Visioning, we're embarking on how to craft your own version of happiness, your own definition of happiness no matter what, using insights from the research into the science of happiness. So you'll discover the magic of whole being happiness, of flow, purpose, and kindness, and so much more. This is going to be fun. And my wish for you today is, may you be happy, may you be free. There is no better time to do this together. Bye for now from Namibia, where it's still very early and the desert air is cold and crisp and smells delicious.
Thanks for joining us on this Happiness Matters podcast. Do join us again here next week on Tuesday. You can subscribe to this series at Apple Podcasts on iTunes, or you can sign up for it on our website, Happiness-Matters.coach. That's Happiness-Matters.coach. COACH. Also, you can join our conversation on Facebook by following us there. Our Facebook page is also Happiness-Matters.coach.